Hello, we're your hosts, Catherine Laffrey
and Alex Murray. You're listening to a special crossover edition of Secrets of Sacred Art and the Secrets of TV and Movies. Today, we're going to unearth the hidden treasures, history, and sacred art in Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. And we want to welcome our panelists today.
Yeah, we've got Thomas joining us again. You were with us on our first one where we did our crossover. So
Monuments Men.
That's right. Yes. So,
and we needed you back on this one too.
I know.
Get your history buff going on this.
Exactly. This is almost a tradition, Thomas.
It is almost a tradition.
Yeah. Just to warn you.
All right. So please follow the Secrets of Sacred Art and Secrets of TVs and Movies in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. For a fuller experience, you can join us on the SQP on YouTube channel, where you'll see all the images we're discussing on the show. And you can find us on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, on X at SQPN, or on Instagram at StarQuest Network.
Yes.
So we need a little
Catherine.
overview of this movie.
We are, and it's going to be a real overview. So this is a Pinocchio film that was released in 2022. It is not the Disney live action Pinocchio. This is something completely different. I think it tracks a lot more closely with the book Pinocchio. And it is about a woodcutter called Geppetto. And he makes a little puppet who comes to life. And we get to follow Pinocchio on all of his adventures and misadventures and all of the lessons that he learns. And this is just it's an interesting take, but as I said, one of the things I really liked about this film, and I don't know if anybody has read Pinocchio, but I have read Pinocchio. And I read it to my girls, and it was hard going, not because it was a very good book. I recommend you reading it out loud to your children, but my girls were so outraged by Pinocchio. because he was naughty. They're like, he's not going to. Didn't he listen to Geppetto? Geppetto told him not to do that. Why is he talking back to Geppetto? I'm like, I don't know. He sounds like he's not a very good little boy. And they were just like shocked and horrified by just the antics that he would get up to and not listening to his father, or if he didn't want to take his medicine. And not even listening to the Blue Fairy. Do you know what I mean? He was bad.
Sassy.
That sounds like that would annoy the snot out of me. If I was reading that as a kid, I would have put the book down.
Well, do you know, I did have that experience as a child with Paddington Bear.
Really?
I remember reading him at 6. I was 6 years old reading Paddington Bear. And there was this scene where he was he was always doing dumb stuff. And they just described him as he got marmalade on his fur. And then he was getting the bathroom sticky. And I'm like, that's it. I can't read about this bear anymore. Do you know what I mean? And I literally have never picked up Paddington again. And that's all. I was so horrified that he was got marmalade all over him and didn't care,
And Pinocchio didn't annoy you like that. We actually watch this movie.
But you know what? I think if you're a certain type of child that really likes boundaries, Pinocchio is going to drive you crazy in the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway,
I have to say the artwork in Guillermo del Toro's version of this is incredible, all through it, and. There's a great making of that goes with this on Netflix. And it is absolutely gorgeous. Every little detail. I've always wanted to work on movies like this. Because I've loved making all my little stuffies and characters come to life. And that's probably why I love Jim Henson and all of his work. And then to know that we have Henson Studios, the Jim Henson Studios was working on this because of all the puppets that had to be made. And then this was done by Shadow Machine, which does fabulous work. And it took them 15 years to make this movie.
But you know what? The detail in this is just, I believe it. I believe it took them 15 years. It's really beautiful. Really beautiful.
It reminded me a little bit of Kubo and the Two Strings, but that was made by a completely different studio.
I remember that vaguely. Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of stop motion, it's more that than, say, like Wallace and Gromit or something, you know?
Well, the early Wallace and Gromit, a lot of the background is just empty, you know, because they couldn't have all of the you know, I mean, you can only do so much on a budget and time and stuff like that with stop motion. And stop motion is one of my favorite filming techniques.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Animation.
You know, I'm a huge fan of Ray Harryhausen and all his great, you know, fantasy and monster movies. And, you know, I'm just so pleased that a film like this could be made today, you know, because I was so afraid that, you know, stop motion's a lost art. Nobody's going to be working in this form anymore, you know, and even just not just the artistry of the stop motion, but as we'll get into, like the religious imagery in the film was so striking that about, I think by the 5-minute mark, I literally said out loud, who makes movies like this anymore?
Right.
Like that was my first reaction was who makes movies like this anymore? Nobody.
Yeah. Well, didn't Del Toro make Pan's Labyrinth as well?
Yes.
Yeah. And that had a lot of stop motion in it, I think. No, the thing about this movie is it's a beautiful movie. And there are not a lot of beautiful movies made anymore.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of flashy movies made, but very few beautiful movies.
Yeah. And this is just a beautiful movie.
And you can tell how much he loved it just looking at him, looking at the setting. I mean, Geppetto's workshop was full of so many details. And again, I will recommend watch the making of. It was awesome listening to the different like costume designers, set designers talking about, we'd show it to Guillermo and then he'd be like, dirty it up. This was during the coal era. Go get some coal dust and rub it around the place. And just, I mean, his attention to detail was just fabulous. And he really wanted things to just feel like, yes, this should be alive. What was really
like it was a real world.
Yeah, real world. Yeah, he was building a real world here. What was really neat was the attention to detail to faces. There's different types of stop motion puppets. Some of them have faces that can move and make expression. So if you want Geppetto's eyebrow to go up, they just push the puppet's eyebrow up. So that was that newer style where it has latex and all this mechanics under it to really make it like a little actor. Yeah. And the puppeteers would actually film themselves doing different motions and then rewatch their film as they did these little like frame by frame adjustments to make it really feel real. But could you imagine Pinocchio? They did the old school stop motion faces where you would like click on a different face plate.
That's like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they thought with Pinocchio, because he's made of wood, we want him to look of wood. So if his mouth moves, none of his grains should move. It should just look like a new cut in the wood to make a new expression. Just fabulous detail that way.
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking, could you imagine like today, somebody, you know, a young person today going, you know what, when I grow up, I want to be a puppeteer. It's like, that's amazing. And if you are, you can do stuff like this. I mean, it's like a legitimate, you know, that's not outside the realm of possibility.
I mean, Jim Henson made a whole life out of it, you know?
He made a whole universe out of it. Some of it good, some of it not so good. But anyway.
And look at these sets that look like paintings. They look like Italian Renaissance paintings. They're gorgeous.
The color, the washes of the colors in this are just extraordinary.
Yeah, it was neat to see some set designers in that making of, as they like put their elbow up against it, and there's like this tree behind them, and the different sizes of the puppets they had to make. They actually said that they made Pinocchios as small as they could, and then adjusted everything else to that. So that if we need a small Pinocchio, we've got one that functions like we want. And then the sets were set up for that. But then because of Sebastian J. Cricket, they also had to make a huge Pinocchio head and shoulders. And
I saw that. That
they
was
could
neat.
have the cricket. And I was like, oh, that's so awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's more than one puppet for each character. And then everything in this revolves around the pine cone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Thomas, you looked up what Pinocchio means because we were all like, okay, what is this? Because it sounds like pine cone.
It sounds like pine cone, right? Or like, but it does have the Italian word for pine in it. Occhio is apparently the Italian word for eyes or eye. So pine cone eye or pine eye is what Pinocchio means.
Or I'm just thinking about how his eyes looked. Maybe they're like, what do you call it? Like the knots in wood.
The wood, yeah. Mm-hmm. That like you can almost see a face sometimes on like old trees and stuff like
that. Exactly.
So what did you all think of the father-son relationship here between Geppetto and Carlos, who's just an absolute sweet kid?
I was just transfixed. At this point, I was just transfixed by the movie, and when I knew what was coming, I'm like this movie's about Pinocchio, so that means this kid isn't gonna
Carlos
make it.
Must die.
Yeah, it's like, but
well, they started with him like already dead, and you're just like, what's going on?
Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we get Cricket's flashback story, and then they just suck you in because it was just one beautiful moment after another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think one of the things I have to say about this whole film, because I think, we all talk about how we kind of interact with, whether it's film or art or something, for whatever reason, I'm going to blame it on whatever type of synesthesia I have. I know I have a couple kinds, but especially Italian art, I associate with food and eating.
How can you not? It's Italian.
I guess. But like I will look at Italian painting, like sacred art, and I'm like, oh, I want to eat that, or I associate it with eating, like looking at like Botticelli. It always makes me think of like broccoli and cabbage and stuff. I like those things. So that's a good thing for me. And this film, watching it for me, for my eyes, it was like a brisket and like mashed potatoes and carrots and green beans and like all kinds of like oranges and purples and everything like for my eyes, which makes, it sounds kind of weird, but this whole movie to me was like feasting on like a really hearty, rich meal. And all I'm
surprised you said brisket. Because of that adorable scene, the adorable scene in the beginning of the movie, the twin sisters running the butcher shop.
Oh,
and Geppetto and his son put up their new bell ringer. With two sisters chasing the pig with their hatchets. It was awesome.
That was so cute. Yeah. Nope. It didn't make me think of pork. It totally made me think of a nice brisket. Okay. Yeah. Nice. With gravy, mashed potatoes. Yeah.
No hot chocolate?
No hot chocolate. I'm not a hot chocolate kind of gal. Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. I didn't think of any food that was in there. It was just how my eyes were taking it in. Yeah.
Well, this is Secrets of Sacred Art, along with TV and movie. And talk about sacred art.
Yeah.
Whatever artist carved this crucifix did a fabulous job.
It's beautiful.
The details on it is beautiful. Guillermo did talk about wanting to make sure that it looked hand carved. He didn't want it to look too perfect. He wanted you to be able to see the chisel marks and then to see the joining pins in the arms.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then to have Geppetto still working on it. It's just so sweet, you know.
I thought
Carlos
they were
off
gonna,
to church.
Yeah, I thought they were going to come back to this at the end of the movie, and I'm a little disappointed that they didn't, because the crucifix is such a powerful image in the beginning of this film.
And the middle.
And the middle. But I thought it would have been nice to bookend it with this crucifix that they were working on. That would be my
to
one
come full circle. To
come full circle. That's kind of like my one sort of filmmaking flaw with this, is that I wish they had come back to the church and the crucifix. But yeah, I like Pinocchio's like, go to church, go to church, go to church. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say come back to it. I think that's something, I know a lot of times people don't think to pray for celebrities, but they need the prayers. And I know that Guillermo kind of has like an up and down relationship with the church. You can tell he had a good foundation there because of how the details in this church were executed beautifully.
Yes.
So there's a good foundation there. I pray that someday he comes back to the fullness of understanding in the church. I'm looking even behind Geppetto over his shoulder. There's beautiful frescoes on the wall.
Oh yeah, and when they're going into town, there's like a fresco on the side of a building announcing the feast of some saint. I didn't catch which saint it was, but
whoever did this, I could tell, really understood Catholic culture.
In Italy,
in Italy. Unlike, I think we were talking about how, somebody might have, they're so vague in how they understand a particular group of people in the world. I know, we were talking about this on The Secrets of Middle Earth, about the Harfoots, like somebody who's never met someone who's...
They don't understand nomadic people,
They don't. But here... Whoever, as they were putting this together, they clearly understood in-depth Catholic culture, which was wonderful to see.
And how the whole town is like centered on the church, and the life of the town revolves around the liturgical calendar and going to church. And that's such a huge thing in these little Italian mountain villages, and all over Italy. Yeah.
We should set the time period of this film, because that also helps understand why the Catholic culture in this community is so strong. Because we start with Geppetto and Carlos in this little flashback scene is probably at the start of the Great War, World War I.
I remember reading
because there's still some planes flying.
His gravestone, Carlos' gravestone says 1916. So that's about the middle period of the Great War.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Italy was, and this might surprise people, on the Allied side in World War I. And they were mostly fighting the Austrians to the north, because the Austro-Hungarian Empire was an ally of Germany, and they had kind of a border dispute with Italy. And since Italy, though, was originally on Germany's side, but once the war got going, flipped sides and joined the Allies. So I think they're getting bombed and invaded by Austrian forces.
Yeah. And by the end of the movie, we're into
World War II.
World War II, yeah. So it was quite a time span.
Yeah, I was very surprised they chose to set the film in the interwar years and leading up and during World War II in fascist Italy, as we'll see.
I know, because the book is a 19th century book. I mean, obviously you have some Italian, the rise of the nation states, which was happening all over Europe at that time.
Yes,
but there's nothing that I can recall in the book that has anything to do with a larger world events shall we say.
So yeah, in this slide, I wanted everyone to see just the detail in the church, how it was created, and heard Guillermo talking about he wanted the church to look like it was made over hundreds of years, because that's how it was done. Sometimes it took a while. So there's elements of it that are like old frescoes. A lot of it looks like it was created in the 14 to 1500s. And then he says outside there's even some elements of, the 1800s, like they brought in, a new statue or some decorations. So
yeah. And the statues on the steps going into the church were really extraordinary as well.
Yeah.
Just those details, love it. I love it when
you felt like
I was going to say, I love it when the beauty of Catholic culture is represented in such detail and in such a respectful way. It really is, because it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And this film,
such beauty was put by these local people in this tiny little town, like into their village church. That was important enough and you can tell how getting this new giant crucifix for their altar is so important to that community as like the final like centerpiece of this church. You can just tell how much this church building is the beating heart of this community.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The crucifix has such a huge impact visually in any church. Years ago at a parish I was at, they were wanting to do just some little minor upgrades. And one thing they wanted was a crucifix that was larger and would really fill the space. And I ended up finding one at a Catholic warehouse. And they went from a small crucifix that was originally designed to be a processional crucifix, but it was so heavy, none of the altar boys could hold it.
Oh, no.
And it was about, I don't know, almost 2.5 feet tall. So it was really big and heavy, cast bronze, I think, or something. But they ended up going with this older crucifix that I had found. And when it filled the space, people just kept saying, thank you. Now I have something to focus on. And it really is the focus of, the church for a lot of people
absolutely.
For their prayer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then,
I can't remember who spotted this one. It's beautiful.
I don't know, but it's
frescoes,
just just these little details that are brief glimpses in the scene. This looks like it's actually like showing the set, because here's one of the lights that you would not see in the movie.
Exactly. Yeah,
but you can
see
the
top
candles.
of the stations of the cross.
Exactly,
which look like are they supposed to be painted in those frames, or are they carvings? I can't tell from this angle.
I have I think they're like, what do you call it? Not plaster.
Yeah, like a relief
like
sculpture of some kind.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a style of I want to say plaster, but that is not what it is. It's a relief technique that was developed in Italy. I have an image of St. Francis of Assisi that we bought in Assisi, and it's exactly this style. So it's like China, but it's mold, like they pour it in a mold, like plaster of Paris, but I don't, it's something a little more than plaster of Paris. Do you know what I mean?
It has that blue background, right? I think you showed this on a show already, Alex.
We did. Yes.
Shared it on our animals.
We did. Yes, that's right. That's right. And so so again, I mean, that's totally consistent with the culture. Like you could find something like that in Italy, and the frescoes are beautiful. But anyway.
Yeah. But on to our story, because we are still kind of in the beginning here.
After we hear praises of the beauty of the background,
right? Yeah. After we hear the sad story, Carlos ended up dying in the church, which to me was absolutely a beautiful scene and sad at the same time, because here he is running back in for his pine cone. So again, here's this pine cone tying into everything, and that happens to be when planes are flying over, returning to base, and they're dropping their bombs that they did not use. It makes it safer for them to land. But
planes were not allowed to land with armed bombs still in their undercarriage. They had to release them, even if they didn't go over the target. Like later in World War II, later in World War II, like for the English, it was easier. You could just dump your unused bombs in the English Channel. But here, they're just like, well, we'll drop them and maybe they'll hit something, Yeah.
Yeah. And they did. It did.
Yeah.
And it did. It went right through the church. And poor Carlos. But, he was in the right place.
He was.
Which I think is another amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. It just points to the truth of the Catholic Church. Is like, okay. But poor Geppetto.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So grief stricken that he could not get over it. And so in this image behind Sebastian J. Cricket, you have Carlos's gravestone and an Italian pine. And that pine tree was the acorn that Carlos found. And his dad planted it after his death. So this has definitely been several years since his death.
Yeah.
And if the tree's gotten that big. And I love this line that Cricket says, where he talks about the world went on, but not for Geppetto.
Yeah.
Like he basically stopped living. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think visually they communicate that because Geppetto does not seem to age.
Between that's a good point.
Between the 19 teens and the late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah.
He does not seem to age at all. So I think they're visually communicating that the world stopped for Geppetto in 1916 when his son died.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. And can I point out, so we have Sebastian J. Cricket, but he signs his name SJC. Society of Jesus. Society of Jesus Christ.
Jesuit Cricket.
Could have been. He was a writer.
Yeah. As soon as he said that, when he hopped on, he's like, I'm a writer. I'm like, of course you are. Of course you are. I'm like, and I love that it's Ewan McGregor, by the way.
Oh, what a perfect voice for this. Yeah. Full of himself Cricket. It just, not that Ewan's full of himself, but he knows how to make that just perfect voice for it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Writing his memoirs. His memoirs.
Well, this is, I have to say, does anybody recognize who this is? This
no, who is that?
This is Albert, not Schoenberger. Oh, gosh. Schopenhauer. Arthur Schopenhauer. The most miserable man who ever lived on the planet. My philosophy lecturer described him as he was a wealthy, angry man who hated his mother and died alone except for his 4 toy poodles. And he was like having to read Schopenhauer. I was like, how did this man not get like hit by a car? He was, and that's why it threw me, because I have to say, Sebastian J. Cricket, in my opinion, does not reflect Schopenhauer's philosophical worldview at all, except when he will say, like, when he gets smashed, inevitably as he does, because he's a little cricket and he's like the comic relief, and he gets hit with a book or whatever, and he goes, "Oh, the pain."
He's like, "Life is pain."
Life is pain.
Life is
so
pain.
That's definitely Schopenhauer, but other than that,
he just has like a streak of Schopenhauer.
Maybe. Well, he clearly does, but Schopenhauer is like not very. He was so pessimistic. I mean, I'm telling you, reading him, I had to like go out and like smell some flowers or something, and I can't even smell, and I just like, it was so depressing reading this man, unbelievably depressing. But I laughed out loud because I thought, oh my gosh, this is like really, I don't know how many people would recognize who this is.
That's a deep cut thing. Yeah. I did not know who that was. Yeah.
And then he's got it right. He looks up at him when he's writing. It's like, yeah, really?
Because Cricket said he lived with a philosopher, a sculptor. Right? He said he's traveled the world. He's like
he did, but it wasn't a German philosopher. You know,
Okay.
he would have drowned in his cup of tea, I think, if he lived with a German philosopher. Anyway, yeah.
So shortly after we meet Cricket and he's setting up his little house there, we have a very drunken Geppetto screaming at God, which, you know, we've all been there. Sometimes you got to scream. God still listens to you. But he's very drunk and he's crying and praying. He wants Carlos back. Then he finally says, if you don't give him back to me, I'll make him. And this is where
it was very Frankenstein, by the way.
And
this
Guillermo
scene.
loves Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And he did it like Frankenstein on purpose. You got the lightning flashing, just the crazy way he's slapping him together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I in my notes, I said that Pinocchio was born of violence and despair.
Yeah.
So that's very Schopenhauer.
And the poor little guy, he's not complete either. Geppetto passed out before he could give him another ear.
Yeah. I didn't notice that until looking at the images after the movie was over. I'm like,
I didn't notice that. Yeah, because they concentrate on him carving the one ear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they really focus on that. And I didn't even notice that.
That's why Pinocchio's not a good listener.
There you go. There you go.
And then we get this wood sprite, aka the Blue Fairy.
The Blue Fairy, who I'm pretty sure this and the other supernatural being in the movie are supposed to be angels of some kind, because not only does the wood sprite have the multiple wings, but they're covered with eyes. Like the very biblical vision of angels. And when I keep wanting to call him Jiminy, Sebastian asks her, like, you know, what, or is it Geppetto? Says, like, but what on earth are you? And she's like, on earth, a guardian. So that implies that she's not, that's, even though she's a earth spirit, she's not from the earth. I even wonder if she's supposed to be, in medieval thought and legend, there was this idea that there was a third class of angels that did not choose either to fight for God or against him. They tried to remain neutral, and that these angels, instead of, they weren't bad enough to be cast into hell, but they couldn't remain in heaven. So they were sort of either sent to limbo, some sort of liminal realm, or condemned to walk the earth until the end of time. Wandering the earth and atoning for the fact that they did not choose to fight for God against Satan and his
fascinating.
angels.
And of course, the one part where Sebastian says, you know, in my travels, I've seen there are other people's, other things besides me who observe the world. And then you have these spirits in the forest, and they're just, that I loved that. Although, if I had seen something like that in the forest, I would be running back to the house.
Yeah. The bunch of floating eyes.
Very Miyazaki that was almost.
Yeah. But just the way they were like kind of look, and they were just, it was incredible. It was incredible. And really what they were was this guardian who the other thing I thought was interesting about the guardians, well, this guardian, I don't know about her sister, is they were wearing masks.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, kind of like a Greek, you know, an actor in a Greek, ancient Greek play.
Right. And, a persona. The mask.
Yes. So we weren't really seeing her, although she could see everything. It was really, really fascinating. Really fascinating.
Yeah. Just watching how she came together, all those little floating eyes come together to create her wings, and then she just appears. And then, in case we didn't know, Cricket's house is actually in Pinocchio's chest.
Yes,
that's right. And he was upset about his house.
Because you think about the Disney Cricket, and he's, you know, just this little wandering hobo Cricket who happens to be, you're going to be Pinocchio's conscience. And instead, we have this Cricket who's actually living inside.
He's a homeowner.
The tree already.
Yeah,
he's a
Sebastian J. Cricket. Homeowner.
Yes.
He made that very clear. But it's interesting because he's the heart of he was in the heart of the trees and the heart of Pinocchio. So now it's like, okay, you got to give this kid a little heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's her eyes. You can really see them.
Yeah, the eyes.
Yeah, they're behind. Yeah, they're behind the mask, and also I just love whatever technique they used to make her glow. I mean, this is paint. If this is stop action, this is. I know they did some CGI mixed in. Yeah, that makes sense too.
Like with the lighting, perhaps. Yeah.
It's just so.
And
beautiful.
this picture,
you can very clearly see the mask. Yeah,
exactly.
And it's interesting because Guillermo pointed out that Cricket, the rabbits, the two sister spirits, are all in the same unearthly blue. He says they're all related. So even Cricket isn't fully Cricket.
That's true. And also his eyes are like the Guardian's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else has like pupils and stuff. Right. So maybe he is like a guardian himself.
That kind of reminded me of like the way we approach sacred art and having things related. You'll use colors to relate things, like we talked about the colors on Mary's robe or Jesus's robe and stuff. So
colors are a way of communication. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we get Pinocchio fully alive, dancing around, singing his song.
This was one of my favorite scenes in the movie because I was splitting my sides watching this scene as she's just gallivanting about, causing a ruckus. There's a lot of slapstick. Things are falling over, breaking. It's just, it's very kinetic. A lot of times song interludes only work in these kind of films if there's something interesting going on visually as well. Yes. And I feel here there really was. Yeah.
I have to say, I wasn't a big fan of all of the music in this. Mm-hmm. I didn't think it needed the music because everything else was so interesting. And I found the music to be a little bit distracting. But in the beginning and I don't know how they did this, but I think that, the level of detail, of course, and talent that the people had who put this together. When Pinocchio first came to life, he was creepy. He was kind of had that uncanny valley type of feel to him. Even in this scene, he was still a little weird. But somehow, over the course of the film, he becomes something else. And he becomes, actually, for me, the most beautiful character in the entire film. And
he actually becomes more beautiful with every injury that needs to be repaired.
Yes, exactly. And I don't know how they did that, but they managed. I mean, it's how he's moving, but I can, because I watched it twice because sometimes I have to watch things twice because I get like visually so I want to take everything in at the same time and I can't. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it was the second time around and I still couldn't. I'm going to watch it again. I'm going to watch it with my family because I was telling them about it and they're like, we want to watch that. I'm
showing this one to my brother. He's going to love this movie. He's going to love it.
Yeah, I think this is a film. I think for smaller children, it might be a little intense. There are a couple of scenes, I actually couldn't watch them because I was like, but
which scene? I'm curious now.
Well, we haven't come to it.
Oh, okay. When
you come to it, I'll tell you what when we come to those characters. But however, the next time I watch it, I'm going to try to pick when he starts moving in a way that makes him beautiful. Like, when does he become beautiful in this? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, I'm just thinking about this. We as Catholics moving through the world trying to become saints with all the help of the church and the sacraments and one another, it is we're transformed. When does that happen? I don't think it. And that's what we watched with him. He changed into,
Everybody went through some sort of transformation. Even Cricket.
Yes, they did.
Even the monkey.
Yes.
And the monkey, yes.
Yeah.
So shortly after Pinocchio's made, Geppetto's like, okay, you stay here. And he was heading to the church. And Pinocchio's like, church.
Go to church. Yeah.
Oh, he went into a church full of people. Now I was just imagining myself. Can you imagine being in the middle of mass and a strange wooden creature comes walking through? I'd be like all those ladies being like, oh my goodness, there's a demon.
What's that? Yeah. I have to say,
I feel like Jimmy Akin of SQPN would be like, cool, and then like want to study it,
Who are you? Oh, yeah. It's aliens.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. This is so funny because I don't know why it is, but in this country, people bring their dogs to church. It doesn't matter what mass you go to. People bring their dogs. And they don't go up. They usually will sit in the back. But I'm like, if you can sit in the narthex, maybe the dog could sit in the car. I don't know. It's not like it's hot. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm just thinking if a little wooden creature came walking up, down the aisle in a church, nobody would say anything.
I think everyone would be too shocked. I
was going to say, they'd be like, oh, very nice. Just, you get all kinds of things.
When he sees the crucifix, Pinocchio tries to imitate Christ's stance as he hangs on the cross, which is interesting. And of course,
why do they all love him?
Yes, he's like, everyone is singing to him, and he's made of wood. Why don't people like me? And
I know. And do you know what I was thinking when I saw that? I thought, well, sweetie, he's hanging on a cross. People clearly didn't like him.
Right, but that's why people love him now.
Yes, exactly.
And right away, a lot of people were instantly upset with Geppetto. Could you carve this thing and leave our crucifix unfinished?
Yeah.
And I was like, and to see that the church is still trying to repair.
It's still bombed out. Yeah.
And 15 years at least? Is that what we're kind of guessing? 15 to 20?
I'm guessing, 15 or 20 years. Yeah. This would be like early 40s at this point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When they were really hurt by him. So he felt probably in some way abandoned by God, but then he abandoned the people around him as well. That's what despair does. I have to say this with the, it was very interesting how,
oh my gosh,
during the mass, they didn't quite get everything in the right order, but they were praying the opening of the Latin mass.
Yeah.
I was wondering what part it was because I wasn't catching it all.
That is in the beginning. I cry unto you, O Lord. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's the very beginning. But obviously it happens at the altar. Line. Yeah.
Geppetto's finally going back to church, and that's what he.
So they were doing the intro then.
Yeah. Yes.
I think. Okay.
Yeah, they were.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Right after the asperges. Yeah.
What I really love in this picture that I picked up was seeing that the frescoes are being redone. Including their light little drawing outline on the wall.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like, that's how it's done. That's so cool.
I know. Whoever did this, they absolutely understood that part. Okay. Here we go.
We got to move on to some crazy characters.
I know.
Pinocchio, bad boy. He's supposed to go to school.
Yeah.
Doesn't go to school, gets distracted on that building with that beautiful picture of the saint is now covered by the carnivals in town.
Exactly.
And before it had been carved by Il Duce, Mussolini. It had been covered by him.
That's true. Yes, you can see all the stuff going on. You can see all this, like the underbelly. But this is, oh gosh, what is his name? Duke? No.
Volpe.
Volpe.
Which clearly a reference to at least to the Disney film where there's the fox who plays the same role. Honest John, he's called.
Yes.
In that.
And, but Volpe.
Yeah, because he's called Volpe Fox.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then Spazzaturo is the monkey. And and do you know what? Honestly, and this is a super strong word I'm going to use. It's not a bad word, don't worry.
Where's the bleep button?
Where's the bleep button? No, I hated Volpe. Do you know why?
I despised him.
Yes.
Yeah. I hated him. Oh my gosh. Because I was like, that's the devil. I mean, honestly, he hated.
I mean, look at his hair. He's got like the horns, you know, like
and that's exactly what Guillermo wanted. He made the puppeteers make his hair horn-like.
Oh my gosh!
And then the fact that his nose is stuck in a lie. It's like, oh
yeah, and it's so long. But the thing
and
is,
how he says that Pinocchio is his slave.
Yes, the way he
offers Pinocchio freedom, but enslaves him. So he's the devil.
This is why he totally was the devil, and he just he hated creation so much, and the part of the film where I actually couldn't watch it was and I think I fast forwarded through it the first time. The second time I'm like, maybe there's something in it, but is when he's beating Spazzaturo.
Yes,
like, I could not, and they never showed him.
They never show it, but actually, you just feel it. Oh,
I know. It was like upsetting to me. It was really, and it's because he's so evil. He is so evil, and he hates everything so much. And and he's almost comical when you look at him at first, but boy, what a horrible, horrible human being.
And for voice acting for these two characters, perfect casting. Because you have Christopher Waltz for Count Volpe, and they wanted a voice that could be so sophisticated and go in and out of any language to show that he traveled the world and he's all that. And then Christoph is actually not Christopher. Christoph was a great villain in the Bond movies.
Oh, so, he was Blofeld, right?
In which one?
He's the one. Oh, gosh.
In the more recent ones, right?
Second to last one, I think.
Yeah, I think he's Count Blofeld. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it was like, oh, just perfect. And then, of course, best casting decision ever was Cate Blanchett for our cute little Spazzatore.
Yeah, see, I don't think he's very cute, but the whole time I was thinking, yeah. Well, when I found out that Cate Blanchett was doing the voice of Spazzatore with all the monkey sounds, I thought, here's this woman who's Galadriel, on a bad day.
You know what I just realized too is that Volpe's song is very diabolical if you think about it from Satan's perspective. We were kings once, meaning him and his rebel angels. We were kings once, and now we're nothing,
Oh, but we want it back. No, you're right. Oh, yeah. He's so horrible.
And to really show how devilish he is.
Yeah.
Weird devil puppet.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the girl, she creeped me out. I don't know what it was. It was like, she had this weird innocence, but like.
She had two faces.
Is that what
she had two faces? Yeah. Yeah. One was nice and the other one wasn't. Yeah.
I must have picked up on it subconsciously. But if you look carefully at the devil's legs, there's that pinecone imagery again. They use that pinecone texture just randomly in different spots to help connect everything together.
Nice.
Yeah, visually. Yeah, nice.
Aw. Good old
Such
Pinocchio.
A sweet picture. He's adorable.
Yeah.
He ended up please, send half my money or all my money to my father. And of course, we know Volpe's not doing that.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah,
do they make
on their travels
figures of him? I need one. I need
wonder.
a Pinocchio figure.
I'm sure you can get some kind of little figure for him. I do have to say this about the little boy's voice. The child actor who did his voice did such an amazing job. But his Pinocchio's character reminds me so much of one of my dearest friend's grandsons. He's just, he really is like that. He's so wonderful. And, when always seeing I remember when Geppetto gave Pinocchio Carlo's book and he goes, "Oh, thank you. What is it?" It's just, it didn't, there was this innocence about him that but he grew wiser as he had these experiences that you kind of hate for him to have, but it's how he becomes a real boy. Spoiler alert.
But here you can see his missing ear.
Yes. That's right. Yeah.
And then, of course, Geppetto trying to look for him. And Alex, you like this picture. What is it about this picture?
And to pay attention. So the next time, I'm sure I'll find some other things. So I love it when you can watch something that has so much detail and thought put into it that you can find things over and over again. So this is after Pinocchio leaves with the carnival, with evil Volpe and his carnival. And Geppetto goes with Sebastian to look for him. But the little campsite where the carnival was, they're gone. And there's just rubbish around. And there are a couple of balloons. And as soon as he walked into this little area where the carnival was, and it actually looks like an old Roman amphitheater, doesn't it? And and I noticed there was a red balloon and a blue balloon. And I'm like, that can't be random because nothing in this film is random. So he's like, "Oh, I don't even know where to look for him," or whatever. Geppetto is really upset about, "I don't even know where to go." And he sits down in one of the seats and the blue balloon comes over and it drags across a little ticket and it underlines the word Catalina. And so Geppetto says that's how he knows to go to Catalina. Is because the blue balloon told him where Pinocchio was going to be next.
There's that otherworldly blue again.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I paid attention to it.
Okay.
It's like, that's significant. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
The scene was so funny.
Oh my goodness.
A dead body? Where?
Right? And the first time I watched this, I'm like, wait a minute. How does a puppet die? I just never. Yeah. It's like you're not real yet, but yes, Pinocchio in this can die. Spoiler alert! But hey, get over it, people.
Yeah, yeah.
They kind of explain how.
Yes,
because they say he has a borrowed soul, which I assume is Carlo's, because he has the same voice.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But the doctor in this, oh my goodness. He grabs Pinocchio's wrist. Nothing.
No.
Listens to no. It's just like,
listens to his heart. No.
Oh, it's fabulous. You got the priest, although he seems more like a bishop because he has his huge pectoral cross on.
Yeah.
And he's getting ready to do last rites for a wooden puppet.
Yes, that's what I thought was fantastic. Yeah. But you know what else? That cross that he has around his neck seems to pull him down. He's not a perfect character. He's not bad. He's not a bad character at all. But the other,
it's funny. This is the one character, my niece, who was about 10 or 12 when she watched this first. Was like, Mom, they did a bad job on that priest. I've never seen a priest that ugly before.
He looks like Grima Wormtongue, honestly.
A little bit. But you know what? Nobody's particularly pretty in this except Pinocchio. But the whole thing is beautiful. It's very strange. The people are their features are exaggerated and flawed, and they've got red noses and ruddy cheeks and stubble, and however, they're not beautiful people, but the whole everything together makes it beautiful. And one of the characters who's also not nice is it Podeste?
The Podesta, yeah. So
Podeste.
I did a little bit of research on this. So in fascist Italy, when the fascist party took over, they replaced local elected mayors and town councils with these podestas, who are basically little dictators over each town. They have executive power, legislative power. They're just a little fascist thug who runs each little town.
Run the whole place. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, there's one interesting fact about characters. Sorry to backtrack, because I'm seeing that huge nose of Volpe sticking out there.
Yeah.
He was not the original villain. They had already completed the puppet for, just like in the Disney Pinocchio, you have, what do they call him? The one who ran the puppet theater. It's a food name, Alex.
A food name. So I should know, because it's food.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Stromboli.
Stromboli, yeah.
That's it.
That's right.
So if you remember, in the movie, you'll see the fat lady and the strong man pulling the tent up in the carnival.
Yeah.
The strong man was originally supposed to be the villain.
Oh,
but that's when Guillermo's like, no, I need him more demon-like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so what do we do with this guy? Well, there you go. He's the strong man now.
Yeah.
No.
He and his wife. Yeah. I thought they were kind of cute.
Yeah.
I liked them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They're adorable. So, yes, when Pinocchio dies, he heads down to this underworld with these very creepy rabbits. What is the story on the rabbits?
Okay, so the rabbits are actually in the book, and they are with the Blue Fairy, and they are kind of like her helpers or something. And they were warning him, because at some point Pinocchio got sick and he needed to take his medicine, and he didn't want to take his medicine. And I think the Blue Fairy was trying to help him out or something, nurse him, please take this medicine. And he wouldn't. And so the rabbits were like, look, you better take this medicine or you're going to end up with us. And he's like, oh gosh, okay.
Are they skeletons in the book?
A little bit. I think they are a little bit. It's been such a long time since I've read the book, but yeah, so they're from the book. And again, one of the things that, forgive me if I'm repeating myself, we might have been talking about this before, but some of these traditional stories and fairy tales, or like Pinocchio and oh, now I lost it. Mary Poppins. All of these stories that were written, they're really strange, kind of scary, a little creepy, but really interesting. They'll draw you in. And I don't know why Disney changed that. I don't even know what you would call that he did with Pinocchio, or certainly that he did with Mary Poppins, but they're nothing like the original stories. And one of the things that they completely removed from it was this sense of weirdness. Mm-hmm. But this is what was in the book, and I don't know why he did that. I really don't. Maybe to make it more palatable to people.
Yeah, a little more sugar-coated.
Yeah,
definitely. And
I can't help but wonder that's why J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were both on the record as despising Disney movies.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I like Disney movies. I don't regret them, but when you read the actual stories they come from, it's like, how did you get from here to there? That I just don't get that. The characters are super sweet. They are very, and yeah, Pinocchio in the book he's more like this character, because sometimes Pinocchio gets a little aggressive. Like, I'm not going to school. You can't make me do that. You know what I mean? That's what Pinocchio was like in the book. And, you know,
so to when the he was going, chocolate, I want hot chocolate, chocolate. Yeah.
I'll obey if I get hot chocolate, he says.
Exactly. That's exactly. Yeah. And you're like, he's not a character that you want to admire in the beginning at all. And, you know, my children didn't even have sympathy for him because he was so naughty.
So what do we think of the character Death here?
Yes.
Very interesting. I'm trying to figure out why she's Death. I know that's who, I'm not going to argue if that's who they say she is. That's who she is. But I didn't pick up on that. So if she's Death, who is her sister? Life?
Life? Because she gives life to
sisters.
Pinocchio.
Yeah. Okay. And she breaks the rules to give life. No. So it's just the imagery of Death here is like very interesting. Thomas, you mentioned like Sphinx-like.
The Sphinx and the Chimera, which is from Greek mythology, which has a lion's body, a serpent's tail, eagle's wings, you know, and also the Sphinx. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what is the Chimera's function in Greek mythology? Does it have like a...
It's a monster. Sometimes heroes fight it. I'm not sure if it's a threshold guardian or one of the guardians of the underworld like Cerberus is.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
Yeah. And she reminds me of the Sphinx too, because like the Sphinx always talks in riddles, and you know there's that
where and the sand,
the sand, the blue sand,
And I love above her.
Yeah,
what is that?
It reminds me of the world between worlds.
You know, kind of,
yeah. I was thinking it's
like
just like
map way.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And one of the things I kind of liked her character. She was interesting, very tolerant, you know, very patient. But when Pinocchio, we should say Pinocchio can die, but then he can come back to life because he doesn't really have a life.
Yeah.
You know, he was never meant to be who he is. So that's why he's somehow outside of the normal understanding of things. But when he dies it's like the second or third time, and he comes running in, and she's like sitting, like she sits there. She looks like she just sits there and thinks for centuries on end, you know. And so when he comes back, she's like kind of a little bit startled, like, "Oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting you." She's just, you think, well, how long have you been sitting there? Like 2,000 years, you know? It was.
Yeah, look at her little pose, like complete boredom.
Yeah,
exactly. Above her, look, doesn't that look like the world between worlds?
It does.
Star Wars?
Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah. I didn't think about that, but yeah.
And she has eyes both on her wings and on her horns.
Yeah,
as well,
which is interesting. Yeah. And also the shelving in the background had all kinds of
the little
hourglasses.
Figures.
Yeah.
Oh, hourglasses. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, they had hourglasses. Yeah.
So, of course, because Pinocchio comes back over and over and over again, I think one time he dies, he comes back, he still goes to work for Volpe. Yeah. And then Volpe, you know, decides to get kind of patriotic.
Nationalistic.
Yeah.
Nationalistic.
It's going to be self-serving, whatever it is. It's going to be self-serving.
Right? Oh, yeah. He just knows this is popular right now.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And that is the flag of Italy from this period.
Okay.
It has the crest in the background, in the white center bar.
Interesting. I didn't.
And interesting enough, and we see Mussolini's portrait on the bottom there. Mussolini was actually not head of state. Interesting to point out. Italy did have a king at this time. It was still a monarchy. King Vittorio Emanuele III. But he was essentially a figurehead, while Mussolini and his Grand Council of Fascism really ran the whole country. Yeah, what a name that is, right? They really ran
empire
everything.
All over.
Yeah, they really ran everything in the country.
Names that don't age well.
Don't age well, yeah. But really, Vittorio Emanuele is still condemned by history because he kind of went along with it. He really didn't do much until very late in the war when it was clear the Allies were going to win. He finally makes a move against Mussolini, but by then it couldn't save him. After the war, Italy ditches monarchy and becomes a republic. Mussolini eating popcorn was not on my bingo card for this movie.
No, I know. And I don't even
these
think
puppet shows were all, he's all selling food and selling the regime, it's like, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The idea of the regime, Pinocchio's marching around talking about victory and they're going to win the war and all that stuff. I'm like, no, you're not, because at this point, Italy has switched sides from the Allies. Now they're with Germany and the Axis powers, because after in 1922 is when the fascists take over, because Italy was kind of resentful from the fact that even though they were on the Allied side in the First World War, many in Italy thought Italy got the shaft after the war, essentially, that they weren't let in at the table with the other top dog powers. And Mussolini takes advantage of this to come to power and install a one-party police state.
Exactly. That's why my daughter was talking about everything that had happened after World War I, and why maybe if some people could have been included, certain things wouldn't have happened.
And we see in this movie, like, they make the fascist salute several times. And I should point out that was, with your arm extended, that was invented not by the Nazis, but by Mussolini's fascist party. The Nazis adopted that style of salute that then became synonymous with them.
Interesting. Yeah. Isn't it supposedly based on a Roman salute?
Supposedly, yeah. I don't know how accurate that is, because Mussolini was obsessed with rebuilding the Roman Empire, which didn't work out too well. I mean, Italy was one of the least mechanized countries in Western Europe. It had no business fighting Britain and America.
I mean, it's
so
really...
Pinocchio.
Back to Pinocchio.
Back to Pinocchio. Because Pinocchio used this performance for Mussolini to help him
mock Mussolini.
Yeah, and to help him escape with what's the monkey's name again?
Spazzatura.
Yeah, I love Spazzatura. So funny. But he's mocking him and doing his crazy little potty dance.
Best
I guess you
song
could say.
ever.
Yes.
Best song. Yes.
That was great.
But in doing so, I think he ends up dying again. And of course, then we end up with him being taken off to the boys' camp because you're the soldier that never dies.
Exactly. Right. I have to say this about this whole scene. Reminded me very much of when Ezra was in training in the Rebels. When he I guess he went undercover, and he was.
Yes.
He went to the cadet camp. Yeah.
Yes, the cadet camp. When I was watching this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like. It was very similar to me.
Yeah.
Even the way the boys were dressed, just the whole like the way the whole training area was set up, the lighting, everything.
Yeah.
Really reminded me of that. So it makes me wonder, like, where's the connection there with Star Wars animation?
Yes. Yeah.
And Thomas, you said you found a name for this place, or?
Well, not possibly? This place. This is definitely supposed to represent an organization called the Gioventù Italiana del Littorio, which was the fascist party youth organization, essentially a Italian equivalent of the Hitler Youth, which was meant to indoctrinate children and turn them into model soldiers so they could be cannon fodder for the war. That's why they're doing this. And Italy was in no shape to carry out this kind of war. That's one of the tragedies of Italy's involvement in World War II, is that they get curb stomped. Especially later, when they end up where we don't see in this film, but they end up being invaded by the Allies, and a really devastating campaign up the entire boot of Italy takes place. A lot of the country and a lot of its Catholic monuments, such as oh gosh, the name is escaping me now. Saint Benedict's Grand
Monte
Monastery, Monte Cassino, yes, is reduced to rubble. During this period, but So I think they're trying to induct him into the fascist youth organization here.
But what a great scene between Pinocchio and is it Candlewick, the young
Candlewick,
boy?
Yeah.
What a name, Candlewick. But
it's clearly what his father calls him.
Yeah. And he explains why his father calls him that, which is very sad.
Yeah.
And this whole, I guess, one of the themes that I kept, there's the theme of the relationship with a father and son are there, but also like on one level where you've got the flawed son and you've got the flawed father. Certainly Geppetto and Pinocchio are kind of stand in contrast with the Podesta and his son Candlewick. But I kept thinking also of like the relationship between the father and the son, like the father and the son in this, and the love that comes between the and in the willingness to sacrifice for love.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's Candlewick.
Poor
sweet face. Yeah.
Oh, see, I'm thinking they're all kind of ugly, except Pinocchio. Everybody's ugly, but Pinocchio. Anyway, sorry. Well, he's This was an intense scene. I wasn't expecting this.
Yeah. So they climb the tower. They tie their bandanas together to say, "Look, we both won." And his dad hands him a live, fully armored gun to tell him to shoot Pinocchio.
I know.
I was like,
and this is his face. Like, what?
Yeah,
I know. And I said the same thing. Like, what? What is going on? Yeah. So that's what I mean. It's like very intense. You have to think about the age of the child watching this.
Gosh.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Because then you end up with
totalitarianism. Bombing. Does to people.
It does. It does.
Dehumanization.
Yeah. Even if
here, just shoot your friend. It's like what?
Yeah.
And in the midst of all of this, the boys are then said, "All right, off you go. We've got a group coming in, and you're going to have to go fight."
They're subjected to an Allied bombing run.
Yeah. Cannon fodder.
Yeah. But then we end up with this scene, which was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
So Pinocchio gets literally blown out of the camp down onto the cliffs. And who's there to meet him? Wise Volpe.
The devil.
Right?
Yeah. That surprised me. Yeah.
This was, and Gina, another reason that enforces my idea that this is the devil is in the beginning, he tells Pinocchio, he goes, "All the world can be yours. If you come with me."
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yes.
And then in the end, then he puts him on this. He literally is crucifying.
He crucifies Pinocchio.
I was like, what on earth is going on?
Yeah.
I was also thinking Joan of Arc because of the...
the fire, and it was...
burnt at the stake. Yeah.
This was another hard scene to watch.
Yeah, and you got Spacciatore is like, just like, Pinocchio's like, "Help me, please."
Yes. Yeah, because he still has that innocence.
Good. Yeah, and it was good to see this was like the turning point for the monkey.
Yeah,
it was like, okay. I mean, and after Pinocchio had basically rescued him from being beaten to death.
Yeah, I think that was the turning point. The beginning of it.
The beginning. Yeah, there's always the open the door, and then this was the complete turning point.
Yeah.
And then from this, we end up with all kinds of things ensuing on the sea.
Lots of stuff going on.
Silly mines here. I just thought the image of the seagull sitting on the mine was pretty comical. I think it gets blown up.
It does. I mean, there were some funny... Again, you have these really intense scenes, and then you have a little bit of comic relief. And the one where, so the little ship in this scene, Geppetto and Sebastian are still trying to find Pinocchio. And they're on this little tugboat or whatever it is, a fishing boat. I think it's a fishing boat. And when we don't see him yet, but when Monstoro comes up, the captain just looks up and goes, "Arrivederci," and he jumps.
Yeah, he jumps off. Yeah.
No, he doesn't even jump; he just falls over. It was very funny.
I almost wondered if the captain of the boat, if that puppet wasn't stylized to look a little bit like Guillermo.
Yes, I actually thought that as well.
Good point.
It was cute.
Yeah.
But the landmine, or the landmines, the sea mines floating everywhere.
Yeah.
And then here it is, our big scary.
Monstoro. Yeah, or Monstro, not Monstoro, Monstro.
Monstro.
Did they ever use the name in this? I just remember being called this, like, demon dogfish.
Yeah, they call him the dogfish. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and but in the book he's called Monstro. And I have to say this, I looked everywhere and I couldn't find like a side by side, but just trust me when I say this. Next time you watch it, Monstro and Mussolini have the same face. They have very similar faces.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
I could see Guillermo doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Because otherwise, I was just going to say, otherwise, Monstro, since almost seems like anomalous in this movie, but to tie him back into the fascism thing by giving him Mussolini's
just eating
face
up everything, just devouring everything and being like disgusting. Yeah, but he is called a dog, and he's so weird looking.
It almost looks like a lionfish. But it's supposed to be a dogfish, which is a bottom-dwelling shark. And of course, he has the rows of shark teeth, which is cool.
Yeah, it's almost like lamprey-like, too.
Yeah. And Geppetto even says, this monster comes up every once in a while to warm himself every few decades, and then he goes down and he'll take us with him back down to the bottom. Again,
and he was big enough to swallow a lighthouse. I was like, wait, a lighthouse?
I know.
That was crazy.
And they were like, of course, in there. And that was like the book. Like they're just in there hanging out. And it's not like Jonah and the whale. It's not like that at all. It's just this weird, just a bizarre thing. Like, how did you come up with that? But this is, maybe the mouth of hell almost, going down into hell.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, with the rest of Italy Geppetto under Mussolini.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, so Geppetto and Cricket were in there for a while, and he was actually using Cricket as bait to fish.
I know.
the few things that were alive in the belly.
Yeah.
But then after the whole thing with Pinocchio and the boys' camp, he's had fallen into the ocean. And that was the end of Volpe, which, that was...
Oh, he lands on a rock and kills him.
He lands on a rock. It was just like, wow. You heard the crunch.
Yeah, I was like, dead. That guy,
So but speaking of hearing, I got to bring this up. The composer who did the music for this made sure that only wooden instruments were used because he wanted it to fit the story of this wooden boy. So no brass instruments, just all wooden instruments. I was like,
I'll have to listen to that again. That's fascinating. Yeah. That's really cool. See the
soundtrack on Spotify? I'm going to check.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, this thing won so many awards.
It did.
79 awards worldwide or something.
I think it won an Oscar as well. Like, not that.
Yeah. Best animated film. Yeah.
It is. I put this one in. Do you know what I was thinking?
Yeah. What were you thinking?
Don't let go, Mr. Frodo.
Oh, you're right.
Yes.
Secrets of Middle-earth Connection.
Yeah, I completely... Yeah, I and of course he did have, obviously he's familiar with the Peter Jackson films, and I just didn't, this couldn't have been a coincidence. I think he was making reference to that.
And what a neat scene before this, for them to figure out how to go from the lighthouse into the blowhole, was to have Pinocchio tell lies
Yeah.
Yes.
And the lies he was telling were so awesome because he's finally admitting certain truths. You know, where he's like, I hate you. Well, no, obviously you love his father.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I love war.
Yeah. So it was neat. It was like he was undoing all of the grime he had put up with over the last couple of scenes and stuff.
Yeah.
And his nose grew and grew.
Grew. I will say, I thought it was a bit inconsistent because, like, sometimes earlier in the film, he would lie and his nose wouldn't grow. And sometimes it would. I'll have to watch it again, but I thought there were times where he tells a bald-faced lie, and then I'm like, wait, why didn't your nose grow? I'm like,
okay. Yeah. I mean, it was pretty long to begin with, to be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I loved after his first time he tells a lie. When they're back at the shop, Geppetto's got the file and he's filing his nose down.
Yeah. As opposed to Volpe, who slices his nose.
Yes.
With his sword.
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Whatever that little sword is called.
Is like cane. It's like a cane, but the sword comes out.
Yeah. Vile.
So I like how they worked their way up to this point, and then the branching of Pinocchio's note caused the dogfish to sneeze. For them to get blown out, but then you have the problem of, you know, here he comes again after you, and he swallows one of the landmines, and Pinocchio goes in. Landmines, sea mines, I don't know, what would you call it?
Yeah, like sea mine, anti-ship mine. Yeah,
anti-ship mine. There you go. But then Pinocchio triggers it off to blow up the fish. And
he destroys
like Jaws.
Like Jaws.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or just like in what was the Godzilla one you guys just reviewed? -1.
Oh, -1 with the aquatic mine in the mouth. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then we get this beautiful scene on the beach where Pinocchio's laying essentially dead. And the wood sprite Blue Fairy comes back, and you know she brings him back to life. But it was interesting for me to have Pinocchio stay a wooden puppet and not actually become a real boy.
Yeah. I couldn't remember how that worked in the book, and I have the book at home, but I was at work all day, and we have a very old copy, but it's. I couldn't reach it, and I was by myself today, and I don't like climbing on ladders in the shop by myself. So because I wanted to read to see if he actually became like a flesh and blood boy, or he remained wooden. And one of the things, this scene that was so touching with Geppetto and the wood sprite, she said, "I only wanted to bring you joy when I gave you this creation." And he said, "You did. You gave me a terrible, terrible joy." And I think, to be honest, as a parent, sometimes that can be what it's like to have children. You know, they're they bring you so much joy, and sometimes they bring you a lot of pain. And Geppetto accepts that. He accepts the terrible joy of this little son of his. And I loved that scene. That was so beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it's mending his loss of Carlos, but at the same time, it's like giving him a security blanket. It's like, he's not completely over Carlos in a way. I don't know, because he has Pinocchio to fill that empty space.
That's true, but something shifted because, of course, he could then move on. But he didn't, but I suppose we should say, in order for Pinocchio to save Geppetto, he had to give up these lives that he could relive over and over again.
Yes.
And so he became a finite mortal being. And and he did die saving his father. But Sebastian had made a deal with the wood sprite early on.
Right.
Like, if I'll help him, but then you need to give me what I want. And he was like, oh, I could, fame, fortune, whatever.
Yes.
And
My book being published.
Exactly. But in the end, he said, and he said, in this life, you get what you give. And I gave everything to make Pinocchio good. So now you need to fulfill my wish. And it was Sebastian's wish that Pinocchio live. And again, this just occurred to me. Okay, I'm thinking like the love between the Father and the Son, the Father and the Son. Well, the third one, the Holy Spirit, that's Sebastian.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. I was also thinking too, when he says, you get what you give, and Pinocchio gave his life.
Yes.
And what does he get? Life. He's resurrected. Yes. He returns to life. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is a perfect
to work these things out.
To our last slide, because they fade off with this beautiful, perfect pine cone again. And pine cones do represent resurrection and new life.
Which I didn't know.
Yeah, and we'll get more into that in our next season. So that's a little teaser for next time, folks.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of sacred art and the secrets of movies and TV, including Chris B., Sandra S., Stephen R., Father Mike S., and Rick S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue all the shows on StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And I also want to send a shout out thank you to, I wish I could remember your name and I couldn't scroll back far enough, but I think it was shortly after this movie came out, one of our Discord members wrote in that they really wanted us to review Pinocchio. And so I'm glad we finally got to it and got to review it. And thank you for recommending that. Yeah. And thank you, Thomas, for joining us. You're going to be back again. I know you will be.
Thank you, guys.
Tradition, yeah. We'll find another fun film for us to all review that you'll like. Yeah. So, to find previous episodes of The Secrets of Sacred Art and to send feedback, please visit sqpn.com/sacredart. You can email us at sacredart@sqpn.com or follow StarQuest on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or on X at SQPN, or join our Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. We'd love to hear your ideas for future episodes. And this episode marks the end of the third season of The Secrets of Sacred Art, if you can believe it. Yes. And we'll be back for another season that will open doors, take you to the top of mountains, discover hidden chapels, and maybe even find the Holy Grail. I can think of a film that we could maybe talk about.
Dun, 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 dun,
yes, exactly. So until then, I'm Alex Murray.
And I'm Catherine Lafferty, hoping you find something beautiful.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.